A very good evening. Hello around the wine drinking, wine tasting world. Welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine with Pick and Pay. And welcome to a very special day on the wine calendar, because today is up there with Christmas and Easter and my birthday in terms of very important occasions. It is International Chardonnay Day. So happy International Chardonnay Day. The celebrations therein will, of course, be dictated, if you're in South Africa, by having access to Chardonnay. And this far into lockdown, that might not be the case. But if you've still got that one last bottle you've been hanging on to, today is a very good day to try it. I'll be discussing Chardonnay in just a moment with a very good mate of mine from the wine industry, one of two guests. We also have, as a guest, Denzel Swartz will be joining me just a little bit later. Denzel is out at Simonsuch, and he'll be introducing us to South Africa's oldest bubbles, our oldest Cup Classic, the Simonsuch Cup Sauvonkel, as well as trying a rather special Cape Blend, a red wine that features 30% or more pinotage in the form of the Frans Malan. So those are our wines from Simonsuch. But first up, we go to one of the more renowned sommeliers, not just in South Africa, but on the planet. We've had him on the show in various guises in the past, and today he appears on the Nederburg series that we've done of the sommeliers, talking us through his career and his love of wine. So an appropriate time to have him on to celebrate the Chardonnay that we have today. Hello, Vickers Human.
Hi, Dan. How are you doing?
I'm extremely well. And congratulations, first up, on a very impressive moustache. It's looking really good.
Thank you very much. It's keeping me sane during the lockdown.
These are for all of us, particularly for you, because your normal life has changed a little. You're not spending time in the restaurants where we normally find you. What have the last couple of weeks been like for you?
Yeah, look, it's very different going from a 16-hour workday to a 0-hour workday. I mean, you're at home, you get time to at least go through some wine studies, which is quite great. Try and not open a bottle of wine at 10 o'clock in the morning is the other thing. But yeah, missing our customers quite a lot. But yeah, just sitting at home, working on one or two ideas with Francis Kroner, my mentor, which will be launching soon. Might sneak some wine out once the restrictions are lifted, and yeah, just looking up other ways to interact with our guests and keep the sommelier game going.
You've set a benchmark for sommeliers in South Africa, both in terms of wine knowledge and in service, which is always polished, friendly, and flawless across both Marble and Saint. We discussed that in the Sommelier series with Nederburg that came out today, and while I mentioned that, a big congratulations to Nederburg, who donated 100,000 Rand to the Eat Out Restaurant Fund, which was a very generous and much needed donation. So thank you to them, and well done. The job that you have, I know it's on that series, but let's just give a quick synopsis, how you got into the sommelier world and why what you do now means so much to you.
So basically, yeah, I studied BCom tourism at Tix in Pretoria, and then started off at Firm Harmony and Roots restaurant as a front desk agent or front desk assistant. From there on, sort of got a bit bored and jumped into the restaurant side of things. And Francis Kroner and Jacomina basically got me into the game of drinking wine with Audrey and Maria. And it was just basically WSET level 3 from there. And then Kroner introduced me into the quartermaster sommeliers. And I mean, from there on, it was introductory and certified. Working for David Higgs and for Gary Kiriako at Marble and Saint has just been an absolute journey. In a sommelier, to sit in this position, to be able to have limitless options of what you would like on your list. No one dictates what goes on the list. It's quite a journey to be on. And the wines we open and what we see happen on a daily basis in the restaurants, absolutely phenomenal to be in a sommelier position like that in South Africa.
You do have the delight of overseeing two of the final wine lists in Johannesburg. The only challenge I have is deciding what to get, although, as we both know, my normal journeys to the restaurants involve you picking something for me and then me trying to work out what it is. We don't have to do that today because we know exactly what the wine is. Two examples of Chardonnay. Today is International Chardonnay Day. What does that mean? Is this a Hallmark-inspired Mother's Day, Father's Day, let's try and flog some Chardonnay today? Or is there a little bit more meaning to it?
I guess it's sort of basically just a history day for Chardonnay, and sort of when it came to light, which actually would happen on this day to make it International Chardonnay Day. But I mean, it's probably just to bring Chardonnay to light. Back in the day, Chardonnay was disregarded quite a bit. It was anything but Chardonnay. It was ABC, and I mean today it's basically coming back. The styles are major different as what it was back in the day, and there's so many different styles of Chardonnay out in the market these days.
Well, let's try the first of those as we run through our conversation on Chardonnay. I can tell you're under a little bit of pressure because Ansel Rabi and Charmaine Walters are both watching. They are voracious drinkers of wine, and Maylou Lambert is watching. So that's the equivalent, if you're an amateur footballer, of having Lionel Messi in the stands. So good luck with that. The first one we're tasting here, this is the Crostata, the Magnus 2017. Before we go into the wine itself, Vicus's broad guide to what temperature we should be drinking Chardonnay at, and how young or old we should be looking at Chardonnay.
So I think like Chardonnay, I prefer a little bit of like 2 to 3 years on the wine. It definitely needs some time in the bottle. The older it gets, it just gets much more in intensity in the wine. And what a perfect time to drink Chardonnay. I mean, we're sort of going into winter now. It's a little bit cooler outside, so not everyone wants to have a white wine this time around of the year. But Chardonnay has got such a sort of kind of warm feeling that it gives you when you drink it. It's a bit more sort of full-bodied varietal. And I took mine about half an hour before we started this video. I took mine out of the fridge just to let it warm up to about, say, 11, 12 degrees. So it's just the flavor comes out much more in the wine. It lifts the aromatics in the wine. So at 12 degrees, this drink's perfect.
This is also at 3 years. So it satisfies your minimum age requirement. I'm going to have a first sip because I can't hold off any longer for a wine that I've drunk actually all over the world. I've seen this in a number of places. What I've loved about this, whenever I've drunk it, is that it does for me what I feel Chardonnay must, in that there's no single component that overrides all of the others. The balance that I often speak of on the show is certainly there. There's just a lovely composition to this wine. There are lots of different elements. And as you drink it, as it moves through the palate, you kind of discover little pockets. And it's a wine of discovery as you drink it.
Definitely. I like the winemaker, Peter Allen Finlayson, hits the nail on the head with this wine. Many a times at Marble, you get so much international customers coming through, and they're like, give me a South African wine, which is sort of Chablis in style. And my first go-to wine is of course the Crostata Magnus. I mean, it's only got 10% new oak on it, so you've got a little of body from the oak coming through, but the freshness you get from this wine, you get this beautiful kind of citrus, kind of apple notes on it as well, this apple tart coming through. And then onto the palate, it just has so many layers coming through as well, but still being very elegant, very fresh. It's not sort of like very cloying or like an Australian style. It's much more French style for me, where it's got that very sort of light freshness to it, and beautiful minerality as well.
So let's say you serve this to some terribly important Frenchman who's arrived for dinner and takes a swig of it and decides that there's something wrong with it and wants to send it back. How do you deal with that sort of situation as a sommelier?
Well, look, if there's anything wrong with the wine, of course we take it back. If there's nothing wrong with the wine, there's sort of you don't want to argue at the table and sort of take him out and say, listen, there's nothing wrong with the wine. It's not a wine tasting club. But usually what we do is we take the wine back. Of course, we want to keep the customer happy. And then I step back and I say, look, the next wine you choose, that's the wine you're going to stick to the whole night. I'm not going to recommend anything because I know if you choose something and you don't like it, then you're more than welcome to take it home and put it in your dog's bowl.
Does it take a little bit of self-control occasionally to not hit a customer over the head with a carafe?
Oh, definitely. Many times you just see one or two sommeliers walking into the wine cellar venting some words you don't want to hear on the floor.
The other aspect I love of this, you've affirmed my belief, it's very much a top-of-the-range South African Chardonnay. And yet, if you look at the price, I think I was down at Gabriel's Kloof, where Peter Allen Finlayson is down now, and they had some of this on sale. This was last year, but it was probably 220, 230 rand a bottle there. It's for what you get. Yes, it's not inexpensive in terms of 230 rand is not a small amount of money, but for what it delivers, it's really good value.
It's bang for buck, definitely. It's a safe option to go for on a wine list. It's a safe bottle to buy in any retail store. It never disappoints for me. It's under DM cork, so you don't have to stress about a corked wine. And I mean, opening it, you're just going to enjoy it. And the longer you drink it, the better it's going to get.
Which leads me to my final question before we jump onto the Capensis. You talked about 2 to 3 years. We were speaking yesterday to Iselle van Blerk from KWV Mentors. She was talking about her Semillon that she's drinking at the moment from '09 that's drinking so beautifully. This Chardonnay, we can drink it now happily, and I think we both are at the moment. But how much longer could a wine like this keep for you as a top-end Chardonnay?
I mean, I think definitely in South Africa, anything for me past 2005, 2006, even 2000, is the wines are made to last quite long. And I mean, a wine on this level, it still has beautiful acidity, and there's beautiful balance in the wine. It's got length on the palate. The finish is sort of medium plus or long, as we would say in sommelier's terms. This wine can easily sit for another 10 to 15 years. And it's just going to get better and better. I mean, I'm a very big fan of older white wines, and some older sort of Chardonnays, 2012s, 09s, 08s I've opened. They are just insanely good at the moment. It's like eating honey with a spoon, which is quite interesting. But yeah, I mean, these wines can definitely go 10 to 12 years going onwards, yeah.
All right. Well, let's see if the same applies to our second wine. And this one, the first thing that always strikes me is their labeling. They've got such a clean, elegant finish. This is Capensis and their Chardonnay. And I think this one, actually, this particular bottle popped up wine auction. This is a wine made by Graham Beard. Tell us a little bit about the Capensis story. Where does this wine come from, and a little bit more about it?
So basically, this is part of the Graham Beck family. The wine was, when I first got its first glimpse of it, was about 3 years ago. No, maybe longer, 5 years ago, actually. Yeah, when I had a first glimpse of this wine. It's the sort of they only made the one Capensis. There's now another label out as well under Capensis. And they took a very much different approach to the wine. I mean, they were looking at different vineyards. There's almost about sort of 5 different vineyards that go into this wine. And one of the most favorite vineyards coming into this wine is that Kaimansgat, and the Fynbosch, of course, which is for me outstanding sort of kind of vineyards to work with in Chardonnay. The wine does have a bit more new oak than the Crostata. It's about 30 to 40%. That's basically new oak on this wine. So you definitely, already you can see in your glass already, Dan, from that to the Crostata, the color is way deeper. So you've got something with a bit more sort of oak on there. On the nose, it's also much more pronounced. It's much more fuller. You definitely get a bit more sort of almost smoky character coming off of that. Some popcorn, that brioche buttery kind of notes coming off. It's not as fresh as the Crostata style. So definitely a heavier style of Chardonnay. And onto the palate. Oh, geez. It's massive. It's big. I like these kinds of styles of Chardonnay as well, where it's a bit more in your face and bigger and bolder. Where the Crostata is sort of something you can enjoy with the starter. I wouldn't be scared to put this Capensis up to a main course, you know.
I was going to ask you something on exactly those lines. It's the kind of Chardonnay I often describe as chewing, because it's just such a nice big mouthful of wine. If I am ordering a dish at Marble, if you've managed to reopen and you've freed David Higgs from Instagram to come back and do some actual work, what from that famed Marble menu am I serving with this? What sort of food goes with this kind of Chardonnay?
Oh, geez. Look, if you really feel like white wine on the night and you're not a big red wine drinker, you can put this against a fillet if you really want to. It's definitely got the body to stand up against it. Many people would contradict me and say you can't put red meat with white wine. But something with the kind of like body and richness this has, I wouldn't go for a super fatty meat. That's why I'm saying fillet, which is usually no fat on the meat. And if you're looking at anything kind of fish-wise, I would deck the seafood platter. We do beautiful crayfish as well, something rich that goes together. I wouldn't contradict this with something quite fresh. You've got to have something with a bit of richness in there. And we do this beautiful kind of crayfish butter on there. And I think this would stand up beautifully to the Chardonnay.
I'm feeling at the moment like a brandy-laced lobster bisque to take the sting out of the coming Johannesburg winter. So many options, though. There's a real versatility to this sort of wine. We've got a number of members of your fan club online firing off a few questions. Gerard Holden, Boris Johnson's older brother from Franschhoek, says he misses you and he wants to know, what is your favorite Chardonnay, Vickers?
Oh, geez, I can't really air this online. I'll probably get hit. Okay, well, if I'm gonna have to speak the truth and honest here, one producer that really stands out for me in both Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, the two Burgundian varietals I do enjoy, it's definitely Hannes Storm from the Emelnade Valley. I mean, Hannes' Chardonnay that he makes is absolutely amazing. I really enjoy the kind of style and finesse that he puts into his wines. But out there's delicious wines of Chardonnay out there. I mean, Gerard also makes fantastic stuff. His normal white label and his reserve label, both the wines are beautiful. As we saw, Crostata Magnus. There's so many great producers. Hamilton Russell's out there. But yeah, if there's one producer that really stands out for me, it would probably be Hannes Storm. Yeah.
All right. Look out for Hannes Storm if you haven't tried his wine already. Also, a question from Skulk Stapelberg. He's a great supporter of our shows, and he's very excited. I have no doubt that there's a Cape Blend on the way. He wants to know, what is your preference, wooded or unwooded?
Oh, geez. I
presume he's referring to Chardonnay here.
Yeah, I'll do both. But yeah, actually, I prefer a bit more a kind of wooded style. I would say I like this kind of upfront style in the face, but more something with body and something you can do with food. Yeah, I'll say wooded. Yeah.
I have to agree with you. Marcel Hartmann making the comment wooded but subtle. I'm not sure which of the two he's referring to, but it probably applies to both. And that, as we come to the end of our chat on Chardonnay, has probably been the biggest step forward for Chardonnay in South Africa from those dreadful times of anything but Chardonnay, is we've removed the plank of wood masquerading as wine and realized that wood is a component and not the overarching storyline of a bottle of Chardonnay.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, winemakers are working so well with oak these days that the Burgundian barrels they're getting, the coopers they're working so carefully with it and so subtle with it. Although they say there's 100% your oak on that, you wouldn't call it in a sommelier's kind of perspective. It's integrated so well into the wine that that's absolutely perfect. Yeah.
Well, two cracking examples here to celebrate International Chardonnay Day and to celebrate you as well, Vickers, not just for being this week's sommelier on the Sommelier series, but also for doing such a terrific job as an ambassador for South African wine and always being an absolute pleasure to spend time with Marble or Saints. Enjoy the rest of the time off. Happy studying. We look forward to finding out more about these top secret projects you're working on and hopefully some wine together in person in the not too distant future.
Looking forward to everyone coming back to Marble and Saint. Hope to see you soon. Cheers.
Cheers. So there we go. Giving us some beautiful Chardonnay. Vickers Schumann, a former South African Sommelier of the Year. He's won all manner of awards, the Mutter Chandon title. He just looks at a cork and he can tell you the name of the mother-in-law of the winemaker. He is that good, but also just conveys his art. And it really is an art in such an approachable and accessible manner. So a big thank you to Vickers Schumann, and thank you too to David Higgs for releasing him to us for a little while. We say goodbye to Vickers and we move on to another very passionate member of our wine community who joins us wearing by some distance the coolest shirt we've seen on Dan Really Likes Wine since our live series started, coming to us from Siemensich. Hello, Denzel Schwartz.
Hey, Dan, how are you doing?
I'm really good. I'm really excited to have you on, Denzel. It's a real pleasure to have you with us because you give a slightly different dimension to what we do, in that you can't just talk to us about the wine, which you know very well, but you can give us the Siemensich story because you've got quite a personal history with Siemensich, don't you?
Yeah, very deep-rooted history with the farm. I grew up on the estate. So I'm a third generation born on the farm. Granddad, parents worked there, and now myself back in there. So it's really personal. Siemensich started off in 1968 with their first wine under bottle at only R1 a bottle, which was 12 Rand a case. Can you believe it? Um, yeah, and I had this great vision of stepping into the viticulture field, but couldn't study um, after school, and then I left the wine studies a bit and ventured off in development work and came back about 12 years ago to complete my wine studies, and now I'm full-time at Simonsberg as brand ambassador. But the farm itself, to talk about Simonsberg, farm started, as I said, in 1968 under its first bottle of wine. We had 3 wines that we bottled at that stage, but I think we really cemented the farm in 1971 when we first bottled a Cup Classic according to the French method. And Franz, who's the founder of the estate, we also know him as the pioneer of the wine industry. He had 3 sons, and those 3 sons took over the management of the farm, with Johan Milan being head in the cellar and Francois as MD and also the viticulturist of the farm. Peter is not involved on the estate anymore, but now the children are starting to work on the estate. So it's a really wonderful feeling to know that as a 3rd generation, you are now working with the 3rd generation next set of owners of Simonsberg.
Oh, it's a lovely story of the families intertwining, and I can see from the smile on your face how much it means to you to be part of that story. You're also part of our story this evening in terms of the show, and we've got 2 of your wines to try. And the first of those is the one that you mentioned a moment ago, our very first Cup Classic. And I think that's a point just to reinforce that you guys did this before anybody else in South Africa. You're the guys who took champagne, thought, you know what, we can make this better, and gave us our very first Cup Classic.
Yeah, so in 1971, we really wanted to make a style that kind of complements or imitates the French method of making champagne. And at that stage, there were no Chardonnay available in the wine industry to use. So Simonsberg actually made the first method Cup Classic with Shannon Blanc in 1971. And it was also the very, or what we always mention, we say it was the most expensive South African wine on the market in 1971, with coming in at 3 rand a bottle.
Oh, rip off, Denzel, rip off. Oh, 3 rand a bottle. I think in current lockdown, 3,000 rand a bottle you could probably sell one for if people can get hold of it. Such is the desperation. The terrific story, so much history, and it's become a really iconic South African wine, both as that very first Cup Classic, but also as the go-to bubbles for so many people. I've got a few questions for you because you are the expert, and the first of those, what is Denzel Swart's approach to opening a bottle of Cup Classic? What's the best way to do it for you?
Well, I think what is quite important is that when you take the foil sealer at the top of the cap off, what's quite nice nowadays, you get a little lever to the spool, like you're doing right there. So you pull that off, and then you want to take your left hand and place your thumb right on top of the cork. Because remember, a Cup Classic is about 6 bars of pressure, which is 3 times your car tire pressure. You'll then slowly turn the mouchelet open. That should be about, I think, 5.5 turns.
That was a very impressive word. Give it to us again, the mouchelet?
Yeah, mouchelet.
That's a French word for wire.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
And so now that you've opened the wire cage, you want to firmly press your thumb on, hold on to the cork, and then you take the left end, the left end, and you turn the bottle. So what's important is that you don't want to turn the cork out. You turn the bottle slowly out while placing firm pressure on the cork. And that's really just important that when you turn, if you're not holding onto that cork will come shooting out quite steeply. Perfect. That's it.
You are a brilliant teacher, Denzel.
Thank you.
Now, I ask you that for a reason. I frequently use what I call the tea towel method, just over the top. Largely because I once almost hit my mother-in-law on the side of the head with a champagne cork, so I've been very careful ever since. We've got this one open, and then the next question, and I'm always interested to hear people's responses. You go around to a dinner party, or you go to a corporate function. On arrival, there's a glass of bubbles. Sometimes there's a barbarian involved who's put little red cherries in, which one should never do ever. Stop doing that. If you do that, please, it's a horrible habit. And they have these tiny, elegant little flutes of champagne. I'm not a big fan of those because I don't feel I can get the nose and the full feel, and also I can't get nearly as much wine into one glass. What's your approach?
Yeah, so then I think a couple of years ago, the smaller flutes was used primarily because when you pour it in a smaller flute, it looks better. You can see the bubbles streaming. The wine is quite lively. So in terms of presentation, it's really good. But when you taste Cup Classic, you want to taste it out of a bigger glass, because once it's in a bigger glass, the aromatic just opens up a little bit more. But I think that has only evolved in this last 7 years. People have really started to practicing the bigger glass concept for Cup Classic tasting, where previously everybody was going for the flutes. So for me, if it's at the party, I will pour it in a flute for presentation. If it's at a tasting to get the characteristics of the wine, I would pour it into a normal wine glass.
What I frequently do is, if I've got a dinner party, I pour it into flutes for everybody else and then put it in a nice big glass for myself. And I find that works quite well for me. Let's take a whiff of this. And already I'm getting a lovely burst of fresh peach, and it's just zesty and alive. And it does what I think most wine, but particularly bubbles, be it champagne, Cup Classic, Cava, Prosecco, it just screams out, come and drink me, and drink me now.
Then I think the important thing with the Carbs of Fungal, which we've actually kept the same over the years, is we wanted to preserve the primary fruit. So with the Carbs of Fungal, it's mainly Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. Some years the Pinot Noir is slightly more, and a small bit of percentage of Pinot Meunier to the wine, which is the classical varietals. But we use the Chardonnay primarily to give it that crisp and freshness to the wine. The Pinot Noir just gives it more complexity and flavor profile, and softens up sort of that acidity. But the one thing with the Carbs of Funkel that I like is that you get those hints of Granny Smith apple crisps coming through the wine. You talked about that white peach character, and on the palate you get this beautiful, clean, crisp acidity that just holds the wine together, which is a beautiful characteristic of the Carbs of Funkel.
It's dangerously easy to drink is probably the best way to put it. The other question I'm interested in here is the vintage. We get, if you look at, say, a Moutet Chandon, your standard Moutet Chandon is non-vintage. You get a lot of the big French champagne houses go for that non-vintage. For me, there's just something that feels right about drinking a particular vintage. In terms of the aging of South African Cup Classic, this is a 2018 Cup Sauvoncle. Should I be drinking it now, give it a year or two, or is this something I can drink in 10 years' time?
No, then we've seen at Simonser, we've kept some of our Cup Classics for 15 years, which some of the people can still come and order it at Simonser. In August every year, we have the Vintage Day where we open these wines back to the early 90s. And we've seen that South African Cup Classics can actually age quite long. And it will change in characteristic. So for instance, the Carbs of Funkel, now it will be fresh and crisp. But if you age it under cork for a longer period of time, you start getting these lovely, what I tend to call honeycomb characters. Sort of the acidity goes and settles down, and then you get this beautiful, sweeter characteristics coming through on the wine, which adds a different dimension to it, which I love. So the one thing with Vintage Cup Classics that I love is the fact that you are drinking whatever the year gives you. And we are having the 2018 Crostata right now. And if we think 2018, what comes to mind immediately is the drought that we had in 2018, which was had a huge effect on the wines. But it tells a particular story, and I think that is quite important, that you're able to pick up a glass of wine, look at the vintage, and be able to go deeper into that story as you drink it.
It's very true. I also think back to 2018 and remember a time when I could buy wine, go for a walk after 9 o'clock, and go and visit friends. But such the nature of where we are. It'll be happening soon. We'll be having bubbles with it. I'm also reminded that you may know this particular song, a South African band called Die Campbells, who've got a line in one of their songs, "Jy's die Wonkelen my wyn," and I think this would be a good soundtrack for it. So we're going to set aside that. I could happily drink and talk about this for a lot longer, but we do have another wine waiting, and this is one. Schalk Stapelberg, who actually asks questions before we go on to this. You mentioned that the very first one in 1971 was the Shannon Cup Classic. Do you still make a Shannon Cup Classic?
No, Dan, we don't do a Shannon Cup Classic anymore. We've in 1978 we've gone to Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, and in 1997 we've added Pinot Meunier, and the Crostata have now taken that classic blend ever since. So the only wine that we have Shannon using Shannon will be on a normal wooded Shannon and unwooded Shannon Blanc.
All right. Well, two challenges for you then. Maybe a 50-year anniversary Shannon Blanc for 2021, a limited edition MCC, and then also an invitation to come back on the show later this year to tie in with that vintage Simonser, because I'd love to try some of the older stuff and see how it compares. So we'll mark that down to the calendar for later on this year. Right now, though, our second wine, this is the Frans Milan. This is going to make Schalk Stapelberg very happy because he loves Cape blends. He's watching now. And it makes me happy because, Denzel, I'm a bit of a Cape blend because I was born in Northern Ireland. My father is from Northern Ireland, but my mother is from the Cape. So I'm a Cape blend of sorts myself, which makes me very happy to try this wine. For people who perhaps don't know what a Cape blend means, think, oh, well, if it's a blend, it's made in Cape Town. But what makes a Cape blend?
Yeah, so the Cape blend is predominantly, or not predominantly, but you need to have Pinot Tars in your style, and that's between 30 and 60% Pinot Tars. And then you have other blends. So we make use of Pinot Tars, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Merlot. Sorry, can I just put my phone off?
No
Seems
problem.
like it's coming through.
There's a man in demand, is Denzel Swartz. It's his family. They're all very excited to see him on the show. Okay, so 30 to 60%. What percentage you've got in here, and what makes up the rest of
in
this
this particular blend, we have about 67%, or 67% Pinot Tars, with a 29% Cabernet Sauvignon and about 4% Merlot. The wine spends about 14 to 15 months on oak, and primarily the oak that we use on this wine is French oak with a small bit of American oak. The American oak tends to be anything between about 7 to 10% on the wine, and that's American white oak that we use. And what we've done over the years is we've gone away from the typically branded wine, and we've now gone for a bit more second full oak on especially our premium range wines. And this wine has about close to 80% second full, and then a bit of third full also to it. And what we do with the oak then is, once you use second full, it's a much smoother integration of the wine, because new oak sometimes can be quite predominant and overtake the characteristics of the wine. So I really want to just incorporate the oak quite slowly, that it doesn't really stand above the primary fruit that you're using in terms of the grapes that you have.
So a strong backbone of pinotage to a Cape blend, appropriate then that you give it the name that you do. You referenced Oom Frans a little earlier on. Tell us a little more about the man and the impact he's had on the wine community.
Yes, I think Frans was a short a man, but very, very dynamic and innovative. And what we always tell people about him is the fact that he started the first mailing order system of wines. He also went against the grain in terms of bottling wines under private label, which he did in 1968. And then, of course, pioneered the Stellenbosch wine industry, which started the same year as Kaapse Vonkel in 1971. So a strong-willed man. I always say that the pinotage in this blend represents Frans. And it's if you understand the style of pinotage that we use, bush vines, hand pressed, it really gives you this beautiful elegance of it. But if you're not treating the pinotage correctly, you're going to get this very aggressive, quite angry grape. And that was on Frans pretty much. Very gentle soul, but if you rough him up, you'll get a piece of him.
Oh dear, I'm sorry I never got to meet him. He sounds like a wonderful, wonderful character, but his legacy lives on in these wines, and wines that are getting a lot of attention, and also getting a few questions. Skulk asking, one that leads on from a question we had with one of our other winemakers last week regarding pinotage. Greg Sherwood, the Master of Wine in London, was talking about pinotage itself needing to be taken more seriously for the Cape blend to be taken more seriously internationally. Would you agree with that? Do you think our pinotage is doing enough on its own footing to then be able to push the Cape blend forward as an international style of wine?
Yeah, perfect question. I think it's very important that we do talk a little bit more about it. I think we've over the past couple of years we've started really making a big impact with the Pinotage Association pushing Pinotage to the forefront. But as South Africans, we also need to start drinking more Pinotage and talking Pinotage a bit more stronger so that the international market can take us seriously. We obviously know for those that don't know the story of Pinotage, it was highly in favored by many wine experts many years ago until Pinotage won on a young wine competition as one of the best young wines in the world. And that's when we got recognition for it. But Pinotage is really one of those grapes that you can count right there at the top of the bar with many of the world's greats like Cabernet Sauvignon, Shiraz. We just need to give it slightly more attention.
Well, we'll keep using this particular platform, and with people like yourself, Denzel, I've got no doubt we'll head in the right direction. Before we let you go to finish off your bottles of wine and answer those multiple phone calls from Denzel Swartz fans, what are you most excited about at the moment, about Simonsek, about the wine industry, about South African wine in general?
Well, I think for Simonsek, we next year we're moving into celebrating about 53 years of our existence in winemaking. And we are going through a phase where we now really start to innovate further, where when France left off, and as the younger generation family now, we start looking at how do we just hype up and make Simonsek vibrant again in the South African market. But what is also quite nice during this time is that we really start seeing a trend where South African wine industry are starting to meld together and everybody's starting to talk with one unified voice. And a couple of years ago, I've always said that South Africa were talking in many different voices with farms, each trying to sell themselves and trying to outstage one another. And what COVID-19 have now taught us is that if we're not going to join together, as an industry and we're talking out of a unified voice and start marketing ourselves strongly as a South African brand and not just our individual brands, we are going to sell ourselves short as a country, and as a wine industry, we are going to be left behind. And I think that teaches us a lot more about, I always talk about the Ubuntu spirit. I am because of you, the understanding that the knowledge that I've gained has never been my own knowledge, but is the passed on knowledge by other people. And so if that is the case, then it becomes my responsibility as a person to say that this knowledge has never been mine. And so it has been passed on, and therefore it becomes my responsibility to pass that knowledge on to others, to make others a part of this journey. And I think that is the lesson that we teach to one another, and what we need to take forward.
It's a wonderful philosophy to embrace, Denzel. Thank you for both sharing it and for applying it. And thank you for sharing some wine with us. That Cab Zavanco is delicious. It's not going to last much longer, I suspect. And this France Milan, delightful as well. Although in the case of both of them, definitely potential to last a little longer. And so I look forward to trying some older vintages, especially some of that older Cup Classic with you later on in the year. But for now, enjoy the rest of those bottles. Stay safe and healthy down at Simmonsec. And thanks so much for spending some time with us.
Thank you very much, Dan, for the invitation. And I can't wait to share some older vintages with you later on.
Fantastic. So Denzel Suarez from down at Simmonsec wrapping us up today with a bottle of the Cab Zavanco, the very first Cup Classic we have had in South Africa, 50 years next year. It's a wonderful, wonderful milestone. And a big thank you too to Vikas Human joining us, the sommelier at Marble and Saint. He's got a quite freaky palate and nose when it comes to wine, but also one of our splendid wine ambassadors. We don't know exactly when we'll be buying and selling and moving wine around, but we're starting to feel it can't be too far away. So start preparing to jump onto that Pick n Pay website, join the wine club, and start having a look at some of the offers. I can tell you there are going to be some great wine specials when sales are allowed, and it'll be a terrific opportunity to support a wonderful South African industry that continues, even in lockdown, to do us proud right around the world. We're back again next week, next Tuesday. We've got a really cool pair of wine stories to tell. We'll be at Warwick and tasting some wine from Warwick and Stellenbosch, and then the partnership between Julio Bouchon from Chile and David Nieuwoud, who does the Cederberg and Ghost Corner wines. They've got a wine brand called Langavi, combining Chilean and South African expertise, and we'll be speaking to both Julio and David during the course of next Tuesday. Don't forget that Vickers is up today on the Sommelier series with Nederberg, and a reminder, Nederberg very generously giving 100,000 Rand to that Eat Out Restaurant Fund, a great gesture and a much, much needed one. So look out for Vickers there. And if you missed it a little earlier on this week, our standard episode of Dan Really Likes Wine features Michael Jordan talking about the wine industry and his own estate, Bartony. Next week, we have Ernie Else on the show talking about his wine brand. That'll do me for now. I've got 4 lovely bottles of wine to try and keep to myself and not let my wife get any of. Big thank you to our guests. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll see you back for more live wine tasting. Dan Really Likes Wine, presented by Pick n Pay next Tuesday. Good night and cheers.